Good morning. My name is Vladimir Tikhomirov. I'm chief economist at the BCS Global Markets, and I'll in this in this speech I'll try to give you my view for the coming week on the macro developments. Russia has finished long May holidays, and perhaps the most important event of the past 10 days was Putin's speech made yesterday, in which he announced a new package to support the economy, particularly, which is very important, is the fact that this package is aimed at supporting most vulnerable parts of the population and business community, i.e., like families with children, self-employed, individual entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized companies, through offering them either direct support, new subsidies if we talk about families, or providing them tax relief packages, as well as, which is important, as well as new initiative, which is basically state-supported loans for the companies to pay salaries to their employees, minimum salaries based on minimum salary levels. What is particularly important here is that these loans could be written off by companies if they retain at least 90% of the personnel by 1st of April next year, which basically means that this is the first instance in Russia where the state gives a direct aid to businesses not in a form of a credit or loan, but basically a direct aid that could be written off by companies. They don't need to return it back to the state if they retain employment. This is an important measure. According to some estimates, that it costs about 800 billion rubles, or roughly 0.7% of Russia's GDP. Another thing that Putin said yesterday was that he decided to start lifting, as he said, non-working period in Russia, which lasted almost 1.5 months. But he added that the final decision to remove quarantine or measures or any other restrictions would lay with local authorities and regions. So the governors will have to decide whether it's possible to lift quarantine measures in any particular region. We know that Moscow, for instance, from today allowed full functioning of construction sites and industrial enterprises, which, according to Moscow city government estimates, would mean that about 500,000 people will return to work starting from today. It is positive for macro. Both actual announcements, the social and economic aid package and the gradual lifting of quarantine, are positive for the macro. On one hand, we're likely to see a lower or smaller fall in real incomes as a result of these support packages. On the other hand, the start of new businesses or restart of economic activity means that the overall fall in GDP could be a bit lower. But I have a concern because basically, given the statistics on pandemic in Russia and in Moscow, where we're still seeing record high levels of new cases, which means that as more and more people would start returning to work, chances are that the pandemic could actually be much more, could last much longer, and the economic fallout from it could be actually more significant. So there is this balance between the economic pressures that are mounting and the health concerns that the government is trying to find, like many other governments in the world. But it still remains to be seen whether this path taken by the Russian government and the Kremlin would work out fine. In other news of the past, week or so, we have seen a quite significant rise in global markets. Some indices are actually coming close to their pre-crisis levels. That was accompanied by a major rise in oil prices. Brent has basically increased by almost 50% since late April, which of course is very supportive for the Russia case and the Russian market, the sentiment, because oil and gas are a very significant part of the Russian market, and indirectly that's also supportive for the ruble. We have seen ruble fairly stable in the range of 73, 74 rubles to the dollar. I expect ruble to trade more or less at the same levels, perhaps 72 to 74 rubles to the dollar, provided we don't see any new wave of correction on global markets, which is not a given. So overall, we should be watching closely the dynamic of pandemic, both in Russia and worldwide, the lifting of restrictions, because that would give us more clarity as to when we could see return of economic activity back to more normal levels, and the demand for commodities, which should be very supportive for the Russia case. So these are the things we'll be watching in the coming week. Thank you.